When the news broke yesterday that Kenny Pickett was going to be missing time with a hamstring injury, we were of the understanding that it was going to force the Cleveland Browns' hand as far as giving more opportunity and more reps at practice to rookies Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel. Well, on Monday, that was exactly the case that unfolded. And both rookie quarterbacks, to their credit, took the opportunity and ran with it. We'll break it down. Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network begins now. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. We appreciate each and every one of you come out to the OBR daily for your favorite Cleveland Browns written content from our fantastic group of writers. And of course, joins us every evening here on the OBR streaming network, beginning at 6 o'clock with Browns 3D. You will have some film work, of course, from Jacob Roche following this at 7 o'clock, various shows throughout the week. I want to thank everybody for tuning into the 2 extra episodes over the weekend. Look, there's always content, and then there's whether or not we have enough content to go ahead and put together another episode for you. If I can get enough things to talk about for 30 minutes, I have no problem bringing you guys content. Obviously, we had the success of Shedeur Sanders with a little bit of a bigger role on Saturday, and then of course the breaking news on Sunday that Kenny Pickett was going to miss time. And again, thank everybody for your support, for checking everything out. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR on YouTube. Make sure you are subscribed to the OBR over on Twitch. And check out on theobr.com the VIP package where you can get the insider forums, all the great latest information. There is some stuff up there about quarterbacks from Lane Atkins. You might want to go ahead and look into that, of course. And after, a brief period, you will also get Paramount Plus along with your subscription to the obr.com on the VIP package. Certainly enough to fulfill your football needs. So when we spoke yesterday, and again, thanks to Pete Smith for joining me yesterday. If you guys didn't get the chance, go ahead check that out. Pete and I kind of gave all our thoughts with the breaking news at the time that Kenny Pickett was suffering some sort of hamstring ailment and was going to miss some time. And basically, what we surmised from that news was that there was going to be certainly a larger piece of the pie for both Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel. There was just no other way for this to be done with Joe Flacco at his age. There is zero reason to push extra on Joe Flacco, especially if you feel that Joe Flacco is probably going to end up being the week one starter, which, of course, there is certainly a really, really strong case for that as of right now. Well, today's practice pretty much gave you just that. It gave you more Shedeur Sanders. It gave you more Dillon Gabriel. And both rookie quarterbacks, they're settling in. They really are. They're starting to get comfortable. And, it's been a long process for them, certainly, rookie camp, then OTAs, mandatory mini camp, and now 5 NFL training camp practices under their belt. Both guys are, staying after practice, putting in the extra time, in the extra effort, all the things and details you would expect from somebody who has the hopes and the wants to be a starting quarterback within the NFL. For on Saturday rather, Shedeur Sanders, and I guess we'll just jump in here real quick. Obviously all thoughts to, Shedeur's father, Dion, going, have been dealing with bladder cancer and, just a lot of stuff medically. Apparently Deion Sanders Sr. is on a path now where hopefully things are going pretty well for him. There was some speculation maybe whether or not he was going to step down from Colorado. That is not the case. But Deion Sanders, health has not been Deion's best friend over the last few years. But apparently it looks like that Deion Sanders is headed into a better path now. And with, a lot of the legends we're losing here in the world lately, let's hope, we can keep that number from growing. But Sanders, of course, was his first taste of, real success, a little bit more opportunity of playing time this past week when he got the opportunity on Saturday and, of course, played well through that, of course. And then now, Sunday, the news broke, and then the Browns were going to have to give both the rookie quarterbacks a little bit bigger and more opportunity. The Browns were not doing, things simultaneously. They were not working 2 fields at once. Whether that was because of the Kenny Pickett injury, who's to say? Coach Stefanski said his plan was to maybe only do that for week one. Sometimes, hey, things work themselves out, just like this Browns quarterback position, well, for the time being, kind of worked itself out where he said, well, there's just too many quarterbacks. And, you hear it in other sports. You hear in baseball, they have too much pitching. They have way too much pitching. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, two arms are gone. I'm not pointing a finger at anybody here, obviously. But then all of a sudden, what you thought was, too much all of a sudden becomes not enough. So the Browns took it to just one field with the three quarterbacks. Again, Joe does not need to be pushed. Joe does not need any extra work. But this is a really good opportunity for a team that has two rookie quarterbacks to get them as much work as, the team feels they can handle without, basically, messing with them and pressuring them. So today, and the success from Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders really shows you that there is ability within both these quarterbacks. According to the stat sheet that gets run around social media, you had Shedeur Sanders at 9 of 9, two touchdown passes, one of which, a lot of people will say that maybe he was sacked. But again, we don't, if you're going to critique the people for keeping the numbers, you can't critique. I mean, look, the numbers are out there. If you want to use them, you want to believe in them as the Bible, that's for you to do. Me, I'm just watching the ball come out of the quarterback's hands. I'm seeing where it goes in relation to the wide receiver. And, make your assumption there from whether or not that is something that would, in a game situation, would have been a completion or not. Gabriel, 8 of 12, no touchdowns. Of course, Kenny Pickett had no run today. Joe Flacco, it was around, I think, 8 passes, 5 of 8, something like that. But Shedeur, and this is where, I'm starting to get to the point where, I think for Shedeur, I want to see Shedeur and everybody, it's the ones and the twos. I honestly don't care who's playing the offensive line. I want to start to see Shedeur Sanders maybe throwing the ball around, throwing the pill around. Two guys are actually going to be on the Browns 53. Some of the receivers that Sanders is working with currently are certainly at the lower end of the roster. And, their possibility of being on the final 53 is certainly, a small amount, a small margin that these guys will stick. But the fact that, Shedeur is getting it done with these guys certainly would impress. It certainly is impressive. And for me, it's the reason I want more. Yeah, I want to start seeing him with Jerry Jeudy, with Cedric Tillman, with Diontae Johnson, with David Njoku, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You noticed, and the one thing that I think is becoming a little more evident is certainly the motion within the offense. And that's not so easy to be incorporating now, with especially with two rookie quarterbacks who are taking a majority of your practice reps. But obviously both kids are, in their playbooks. Both kids are very active and alive during meetings because you're seeing a good amount of motion. And, with everything else that's going on for the quarterback is, making sure everybody's lined up, who's this? Is there a hot route? Where is the coverage? All of this stuff, making sure that you're getting everything you need to get in line and still have enough time to have the motion do what you needed to do shows that, both guys obviously are putting it in. They are absolutely giving and putting in the effort. One thing I think that seems to stand out pretty good is there is a lot of mobility for the quarterbacks. I think they are trying to, work the boot game, so to speak, the rollouts, the semi rollouts. Dillon Gabriel actually had a nice ball today. I think it was to Diontae. Actually, it was Jerry Jeudy, where Dillon Gabriel was actually rolling out, and it was a short setup rollout to his opposite side, rolled out right. So basically had a 180 plant, and there was Jerry Jeudy wide open, and, Gabriel fired a dart to him. This is something that probably is a little bit more of a comfortable thing for Dillon Gabriel, just a little bit more athletic than Shedeur. And Shedeur, it's not that he didn't do it at Colorado, but, most of the stuff that Shedeur did while he was at Colorado was through obviously the pocket. But these are things that, you can do to hopefully make life easier. And there's less coverage to read for a rookie quarterback as you roll out. And normally you have a high, you have a low, and you have a crosser. You basically just read the bodies in the room. coverage wise, and then that should honestly dictate to you where the defense is lined up, that where your open throw should be. The one touchdown that people were saying that maybe Sanders would have been sacked on was a little bit of a YOLO ball. I'm not going to lie, but in that instance, where you throw that type of ball doesn't necessarily make it such a gamble. The ball was on the back line of the end zone. Only his guy was going to be able to catch it. So, the only two possibilities of that, or maybe his guy catches it, or the ball ends up going out of the back of the end zone. So, certainly not, an ideal situation to just, throw up a hero ball every now and then. But you also have to have some faith and belief that your guys are going to be able to make some plays for you. And, that's one of the things where rookie quarterbacks struggle in coming to the NFL. It's and it went back to Peyton Manning. It's guys aren't open. Well, no, not really. And he is open, but you're going to have to throw it high and to the outside. And, you're going to have to let your guy go make some plays for you. And it's the theory of throw them open. So that second touchdown, that first touchdown from Shedeur Sanders to the back of the end zone, that is a case of that. The D-backs back was to him. I believe it was Cameron Mitchell. So if you're not seeing the face, whatever, there's no way Mitchell knows what's coming. So, you go ahead and you fire that ball and see what can happen. And obviously the guy went up and made a play for him. The second touchdown to the tight end was a rollout, obviously, for Shedeur. Got into a numbers game, kind of flushed the side, and there was nobody there to account for the tight end. And up the field he went and took it to the house. So it's really, and for me, and I've told you guys this, and I keep saying it. I'm not trying to say like, I'm planting a stamp here. I'm just saying that this is the way, in my opinion, it should work out. And it's kind of looking right now like it is, you play Joe Flacco in the beginning because you think there's an opportunity that you can be successful. You come to a point where it is either successful or it's not. If it is successful and you get to week 7 and you're 3-3, 4-2, possibly, whatever, you're hovering around 500, you're above 500, then it continues to be Joe Flacco's time. If you told me right now that Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders barely play in 2025, but the Cleveland Browns go to the playoffs, I'm going to say, yes, I want to go to the playoffs. Yeah, I know about the draft pick, whatever. That stuff will work itself out. But the opportunity to go to the playoffs is the opportunity to go to the playoffs. And if you can possibly get there, and again, I'm not saying I believe this team is there yet. It's a little early to believe that this team could be that competitive. But if you tell me there's an opportunity in a case where the Cleveland Browns could end up going to the 2025 playoffs, I'm absolutely in. I'm 100% in. Now, if you get to a certain point by week 7, by week 8, that it's just not working and you're 2-4, God forbid worse than that, then there really is no reason for Joe Flacco to be starting these games anymore. And it should 100% be about rookie development. And again, I'm not saying there's a chance Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders or both or neither in 2025 can do enough to sway the Cleveland Browns from taking a quarterback with a first-round pick, of which they have 2, in the 2025 NFL draft. There's probably a good probability that regardless of what happens, the Browns will take a quarterback in the 2026 NFL draft. But it doesn't mean you stop the developmental period. And, if you win an extra game or two going down towards the end of 2025 with Sanders or with Gabriel, and all of a sudden now you're drafting a little bit lower, I'll take it. So be it. You're supposed to be developing your younger players. So I'm excited for the way things went today. I'm excited, obviously, for the next couple of days. You with this, you stack days. You want to be able to stack days. So now for Shedeur Sanders, it was a promising Saturday. It was a promising Monday. Now the goal should be to, hey, I don't want to fall back to the pack. I want to continue, my growth pattern. And Dillon Gabriel, although he's not getting nearly as much publicity, and we understand why, of course, Shedeur Sanders just such a lightning rod of a name. Dillon Gabriel is another guy who's stacking some pretty good play out there each and every day. So that's exactly, what is the best case scenario for the Cleveland Browns currently right now is that these guys go out there every day, they compete, they perform, and hopefully it leads, to production when they finally or ever get their opportunity to get on the field behind center. Joel Bitonio did not practice today. Um, I would think with pads on, there's probably going to be a couple of guys where, pitch counts are going to come into effect. And, certainly Joel is a hell of a lot more important than September, October, November, December than he certainly is in April and August. So, no worries about Joel Bitonio and, what type of work he's getting in training camp. There was probably your highlight of the day, the hit of the day. Dylan Sampson got caught in a weird situation where, basically ended up, basically taking a forearm clothesline, whatever you want to call it, from Carson Schlesinger, and, went down pretty hard. Hey, this is the NFL. This is going to happen. Um, I also think, there was some other pretty decent physicality out there from the linebackers. Mahmoud Diabate definitely was the guy who was popping some pads today. And, like we were talking about, a little bit yesterday with Pete, you know, even though this linebacker room is now kind of losing, the brand value, the brand names that was this linebacker room with, of course, JOK and, of course, with Jordan Hicks. Jason Tarver has just put out a pretty decent linebacking room every single year for the Cleveland Browns. And there's certainly been years where there hasn't been much invested into the linebacker room. And in those years, and regardless, Jason Tarver has always seemed to, gotten better from the linebacker room than what was necessarily invested into it. Jason Tarver is a pretty damn good football coach, a pretty damn good linebacker coach. And it's, certainly been a good hire from day one, and he just continues to be, a real solid part of the defensive coaching staff here. Um, Diontae Johnson definitely was in place today. And again, it's difficult because I think part of you, and certainly part of me, wants to maybe get excited about the aspect of Diontae Johnson and the fact that, was a former second team All Pro. And there are times that this guy was a really damn good football player for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but certainly got, within his own head and became difficult to deal with for more than a calendar year with more than one organization. And, look, sometimes, and I'm not saying it was, rock bottom, but, sometimes, you got to kind of go through some really bad things to change yourself and maybe to start appreciating things a little bit more. And Diontae Johnson, maybe that is the case. And, look, there is a world, and there is a world and a need for Diontae Johnson to be, successful with this team. This team needs all the wide receiver help they can currently get. So certainly Diontae Johnson staying in line, towing that line, helping and, producing is something that's really, been good for the, overall sake of this offense to the point through training. There was a nice reception today from Cedric Tillman, from Joe Flacco. Tillman over the middle, and this is the tough thing with Tillman in regards to this. This is kind of where Tillman's game is, and where Tillman's success can be had. But you do have to keep in mind with the understanding that he's been a guy that gets dinged up, so it's tough because you don't want to take the player out of doing what they are good at. But you do have to understand, of course, that, what they're good at, where they are successful, could sometimes, bring some issue. But to this point, for Tillman, back getting a little work in, got some teamwork in today, obviously, so for Cedric Tillman, these are, hopefully, rebuilding blocks as he, tries to climb his way back up and kind of prove to everyone that, he can be a consistent contributor at the wide receiver position. You can get Tillman to give you some consistent, contributions, and Diontae Johnson to continue on the path he's at. All of a sudden, this Cleveland Browns wide receiver room kind of looks a little bit better. I think we all have the utmost confidence in Jerry Jeudy and what it is that he can do. And I thought Pete spoke about that pretty well yesterday. And it was kind of something that maybe I wasn't necessarily focusing on. is he just thought the overall offense being improved, just being better, should be something where Jerry Judy's numbers stay the same, go up a little bit, because Jerry Judy was playing at that level. The rest of the offense kind of needed to get to his level. And, we'll see if this can be a consistent thing, certainly from the quarterbacks. But this is what they kind of need, in order for all this, to work. And of course, be able to, get the best out of, their number one wide receiver. And, year two certainly could see a spike for Jerry Judy. It could be because of overall improved quarterback play, overall improved offensive play. You could maybe see a little dip in the numbers, and it could still be positive because you're getting more involved. David Njoku, of course, Fannin involved, Tillman involved, Johnson involved, the running backs involved. So, that is kind of the ideal, I think, of what the Browns are hoping for right now, at least from the offensive side of the ball, is that, they just can continue to click and stack days together and kind of have everybody perform well and just keep putting pressure on defenses and keep putting pressure on defenses. Jerome Ford was back in practice today. Jerome did not take part in team drills, which makes sense. Participated in the individual drills as he's kind of working his way back in the fold here from whatever the little ailment was that basically had him down for a little while here. Um, Kevin Stefanski did speak in regards to Kenny Pickett and said, "Look, just because he's injured does not mean that the opportunity to be in play for the starting quarterback position has gone away." And again, it's the correct way to say things. You're never gonna make accusations. You're never going to put somebody on blast. But I think what you're seeing certainly from today, and with the success on Saturday of Shedeur Sanders, and then carried over again in today, is that it's going to be the veteran quarterback who wins the gig, and then it's going to be the two rookie quarterbacks on the roster. Browns are going to have zero intention of moving on from Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders at any time. It's a long-term investment. It may not have a big return of the investment. Going to play this hand, you know, with the pair of rookies in mind. I think I think, and I've kind of always thought, but it's going to be Joe week one against Cincinnati. That's going to be the way it's going to work out. Health permitting, of course. And Joe, at his age, and I believe what is it, 17 years now within the NFL, and safe to assume there's maybe not another opportunity for Joe after this year. Maybe there is, but you want to see Joe go out there and just leave it all out there. And I don't think Joe is your typical 40-year-old quarterback because he's just not been that beat up. There's not really been a severe injury that Joe Flacco has taken. Never was really a world beater athlete, and certainly that is not the case today at 40 years old. But, that strong right arm, you know, is still a howitzer. I mean, there's just no getting around that. Joe Flacco absolutely has a monster throwing arm. And it's it certainly was beneficial to this team in 2023. It looks like it could be a really, really beneficial thing for this team in 2025. And, the developing of the rest of that wide receiver room as this team tries to, definitely right the wrongs of 2024. You heard several talk about practice today and just, it was on a different intensity level. Um, there were stories out of the Greenbrier last year that, it just got too chummy. And, maybe some guys, weren't going necessarily all out because the guy in front of them was, either a good friend or, whatever reasons that it was. But this team really, is putting in the work early here. And, there could be reasons or people that are here or people that are no longer here or people that are not physically here at the time that this team is, starting to, fight for each other. After the Schlesinger hit today on Dylan Sampson, I mean, the defensive guys went absolutely bananas. You could definitely tell that, the defensive guys, even though they were pretty successful for most of the early 4 practices to this point, it's a whole different ball game, when you are putting on the helmets, when you're putting the mouthpieces in, strapping up those pads and, basically, put the men in, what is it? Put the women and children in bed and let's go hunt for dinner. And defenses thrive on this stuff. They can't stand the non-padded stuff. They wanna go out, they wanna hit, they wanna seek, they wanna destroy. It's the whole theory of, what NFL defense, or defense in football in general is. So, that's why I think kind of what went on today for the Browns passing game and the high level of success it kind of had was impressive because you really thought, at least day 1 with pads on, this would probably be the defense's day. So important, for that Browns offense to get a W, at least feeling good about themselves after the first day of padded practices. We'll be back at it tomorrow. I believe practice is at 2 o'clock. Wednesday, the Browns will practice in the morning before having the rest of the day off and then having Thursday off as well. But I would say as much as I closed out my episode on Friday, with some displeasure of, things taking too long to, pick up for the offense. And some of that may have just been me. I got a little cranky, I guess. But no, the belief for me was more that, hey, I think there is a little bit more in here with this Browns offense than we were seeing to this point. So that's kind of where I'm probably a tad bit more excited about the events, certainly of Saturday, the events of today, as this team is, trying to pick it up a little bit and, not maybe a sense of urgency, but, hey, where is, all this work in practice, all this work in the film work? How is it or is it going to translate into actual success? Now, granted, it's, offense for defense. It's offense versus defense, but, it matters certainly for the offense. The passes are being, completed, they're being caught, yards being gained, touchdowns are being scored. I believe the confidence level of the Browns quarterback room is certainly, taking a little bit of an uptick here right now. So we're going to just continue, with where this is going. Again, there's not really much update on Kenny Pickett. It sounds like maybe it's a week to week thing. But is he ready by the time he gets down to Carolina to participate in, joint practices? I don't think anybody truly has an answer for that just yet. And, you see, and we'll just watch, because, starting next weekend, those 3 weeks will obviously all be game weeks. So as far as practices, the reps are certainly going to be a little bit less because you're not going to practice that hard with games coming. Is Kenny Pickett available in these preseason games or is he not? I don't think the Browns are actually going to fancy in any way whatsoever actually putting Joe Flacco into a preseason game at the age of, 40 years old. That makes no sense. And I did probably a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, kind of suggest that maybe there could be another quarterback brought in here because he didn't think Joe was going to play preseason games anyway. And if that's the case, and of course Kenny Pickett is out, you might want a third body that can actually participate in these preseason games. So I would certainly keep my eye out for that here in the next couple of days, or even still before this team heads down to Carolina next week to begin joint practices with the Panthers before their first preseason game. And I'm going to tell you right now, the Panthers are a little bit better football team than people think. The team really started to kind of find themselves over the last half of the 2024 season. So it should be a nice team to gauge, where these Brownies are at, as they are, basically graduating from nothing but team practices, certainly to an NFL game against somebody else's roster. As always, we appreciate everybody comes on out here to the OBR daily. The guys continue to pump out some great content. Make sure you're reading every drop of it. Make sure you sign up for that VIP package. Get into the insider forums. Get your question answered. Ask the insiders, of course. And with that subscription. Eventually, you can bundle it with Paramount Plus, no extra cost. So, certainly a nice little perk to have there as well. Make sure you're coming out to the OBR streaming network every night. Subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Twitch. We start every night at 6 o'clock with Browns 3D, various other shows throughout the week. So, keep doing that. Football is here. We are excited. The Slack channel here for the OBR is hotter than it has been in a really, really long time. We're all excited. Football's here. Hopefully, the Cleveland Browns can be as good to us as the excitement level we have for them being back. All these things being said, this has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. Browns 3D on the OBR streaming network, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.